Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. And it was a beautiful day this morning. The sun was out, it was shining, and in the space of about 10 minutes, it's all sort of gone pear-shaped. It's starting to actually drizzle a little bit here and overcast. It's amazing how quick it can turn. But big news overnight if you're a Tim Tszyu fan. Massive news that it looks like he will be getting another opportunity at Sebastian Fundora. This has all just come to light. There has been rumours, and I must admit I just discarded those rumours because it has been said to me a few times, well, did you hear the rumblings that Fundora will fight Tim Tszyu? And I said, nah, there's no way that'll happen. Tim, he's only had the one comeback fight. It looks like Fundora is going to fight Zayas, and he's mentioned other opponents and not Tim. We all know that they didn't give Tim that immediate rematch, which they probably should have. And I must admit, I thought that fight was a year to 18 months down the track. So I'll happily take back those words. But it looks like it's going to be July 19 in Las Vegas. So we'll get to that in a second. Just a couple of quick things that happened on this day. First of all, back in 1976, Muhammad Ali defended his world heavyweight title with a decision win over Jimmy Young. And in 2022, Shakur Stevenson retained his 130-pound title against Oscar Valdez. That was in Las Vegas. I think that was for the WBC and WBO belts, was it? Actually, I'm not sure it was a unification, but either way, Shakur Stevenson with that 12-round decision win over Oscar Valdez. Now, as I said, with Tim, actually, sorry, before I move on, I've got to just stop myself because the other day, it was April 26th, and I did the On This Day thing. I can't remember what happened that day, but a couple of massive fights that I forgot to mention. One of the biggest nights or days in Australian boxing history, and I completely forgot about it. Because when you Google things and look stuff up, sometimes it just doesn't bring up things that have happened. I don't know why, but as I said, one of the biggest days in Australian boxing. Jeff Fenech and Lester Ellis both won world title fights on that day. Exactly the same day, by the way, back in 1985, Jeff Fenech won his first world title, winning the IBF 118-pound title over Satoshi Shingaki, and Lester Ellis retained his IBF 130-pound title with a 13th round come-from-behind stoppage win of Rod Sequin. And I just remember that like it was yesterday. I was 11 years old. And I was absolutely horrified at what happened to Lester at the end of the second round, I think it was, when he was rocked. He looked gone. He was saved by the bell, and it looked like his reign as IBF world champion was going to come to a very, very abrupt end. But in true Lester style, he showed his heart, came back and stopped Sequinin in the 13th round. And of course, Jeff Fenech with that memorable win over Satoshi Shingaki, I think in his 7th fight, I think it was, to win that belt. And we all know what Jeff did after that. That was in Sydney, that one at the Hordern Pavilion. The Leicester one was in Melbourne at Festival Hall. Two iconic fight venues. So again, apologies to the Aussie boxing fans, especially the ones that have pointed it out to me and sent me messages. And I think someone maybe commented on it on Talking Boxing the other night. So apologies for missing that one. I can't believe I missed one of the biggest nights in Aussie boxing history. But again, not everything comes up when you Google sort of what happened on this day in boxing history. So we'll move on. As I said, the Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora fight. Now, the surprising thing with this one is that Fundora was all set to fight Xander Zayas. But if you're like me, you probably would have seen that Sebastian Fundora seemed a little lukewarm to the whole thing. They tried to do a little bit of the sort of setting the fight up after Sebastian Fundora's last fight with Shordale Booker. But Team Fundora, as I said, just seemed a little bit lukewarm about the whole thing. They sort of went through the process. I don't think he wanted to face off with him or do anything in the change rooms with him either. And this was probably, maybe highlight that something was on the go even back then. Was that before Tim's fight? I think it might have been. Whatever. But you get the feeling that maybe something was on the go even then, that maybe Tim was, or maybe a word was said to Tim's team that, look, you get past this fight and we reckon we'll do the rematch. As they should, by the way. I mean, we all saw the fight last year with Tim and Fundora in Vegas with what happened there. And if ever there needed to be a rematch, this is it. And I think everyone was disappointed in Sebastian Fundora and his team for verbally agreeing to give Tim a rematch. Or I think, was it before the fight, wasn't it, that there was a rematch clause in place or whatever it was, but they didn't stick to the word and they pretty much snubbed Tim Tszyu, didn't they? To the point where I didn't think we'd get this fight. But it's amazing what goes on behind closed doors, and isn't it even more amazing at how the wheels of fate can either be with you or spin your way or against you and spin the other way. It is just crazy to think that Tim, on top of the world, then on the scrap heap, and now potentially back on top of the world again. It is a bizarre sport, it really is. And, you know, like last year, as I said, he was on top of the world before the Fundora fight. His world came crashing down literally in the second fight with Murtazalyov. He lost, obviously, in those controversial, sort of incontroversial fashion to Fundora. I think we all sort of gave him an out for that one and thought, no, it's okay, Tim will be back. But then, as I said, it literally came crashing down against Murtazalyov with that devastating third-round knockout. And I think a lot of people thought that might be it for Tim. Before he even got those massive fights, his career might be over. And, you know, he had that sort of soft win over Spencer, which, again, I totally was in agreement with. Spencer was the perfect opponent. And looks like it, definitely was the case if he's definitely going to get that shot with Fundora now. But, look, credit to No Limit as well and Tim's team to get this opportunity, if it is actually finalised, and by all accounts it is, it's all over the sites this morning. What a job they've done in the management of Tim Tszyu, because I think everyone was critical of them after the two fights last year, but to get him in a position now to have that second crack at Fundora, it is amazing job by No Limit. And look, I've been guilty of laying the boots in. I'll do it with anyone if it's warranted, but they do take a bit of flack from boxing fans, but geez, they get the boxers opportunities, don't they? Always get them the big fight. So now it's up to Tim to see whether he can get the job done and reclaim the belts. Now, it's only going to be for the WBC 154-pound belt. Fundora will vacate the WBO belt. Xander Zayas will fight, I think it's Jorge Perez now, for that vacant 154-pound title, and it'll be a standalone 154-pound belt. So, but isn't it amazing that after Tim lost to, not maybe Fundora, not so much, but definitely against Murtazalyov, when no one wanted a piece of him, he was the forgotten man at 154, he was just pushed to the side, and no one was speaking about fighting Tim Tszyu. But if he wins this fight with Fundora, all of a sudden he's going to have the Virgil Ortiz as well. He'll be his mandatory, so that would be a fight you would think that would be made at a later date. You know, the Bowachoks and Madramovs and maybe a Boots Ennis, all these types of fighters could be in the wings for Tim Tszyu. And as I said, none of them really wanted a piece of Tim Tszyu after what happened to Murtazalyov. But here he is. It's amazing what can happen just with a click of the fingers. So let's hope it is confirmed and he gets that shot on July 19th in Las Vegas. A big weekend, or that particular day is a massive day in boxing over there, because if that happens in Vegas, and then we've got the big, was it Stevenson and Zapata and Belunga and Shiraz and the other two fights on that card as well. So could be a big night for boxing fans over there. So now, obviously this, come here, buddy. Obviously this now probably scuttles the Keith Thurman fight, which also has come out of nowhere, because I think we're all just resigned to Tim fighting Keith Thurman next, all sort of getting ourselves ready for that one. But I'm not sure what he does now. Now, Michael Zarafa has actually put his hand up and said he will fight Keith Thurman. Good on Michael for doing that, by the way. And all the things that get said about Michael, you can't begrudge him that he always says he'll fight the best. He's always willing to put his hands up, or his hand up. I don't know, he said that he'll fight Thurman now, but I'm just not sure whether that's going to happen. I've got a feeling that Keith Thurman, when he came to Australia to fight Brock Jarvis, I think it was on the pretense that it would be Tim Tszyu next. It would just get the juices sort of flowing of all the Aussie boxing fans who maybe weren't familiar with Keith Thurman, and sort of get the media talking about him, getting the whole boxing scene talking about him, and make the fight bigger and more attractive, which I think is a great idea. but I don't think he's going to come back for a Michael Zarafa fight. I think he's going to look at big fights overseas. He's still a big name in the sport. I'm sure there'll be some big names that will still want to fight him, and I just don't think Michael Zarafa probably fits the bill for him. Because you've got to remember, even though Michael is a big sort of name in Australia, he's not internationally, hasn't really got a lot to offer Keith Thurman. So I'm just not sure whether that fight happens. Michael did actually say that he's been promised 3 fights by No Limit. He's obviously had the one with Basir A. He would like Thurman to be the second fight, and then he said he's been promised a big pay-per-view fight in Melbourne at the end of the year. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. In theory, it's a great idea. I think I've said on here before that I just don't think Michael is a big enough draw for a big pay-per-view event unless there's a couple of other big fights on the undercard, and I just don't think he's a big enough draw in Melbourne either for a big event. Look, he's a big name, but for different reasons than some of the other fighters. He does rub a lot of people up the wrong way, and maybe that will work for him as far as getting people to the event and watching on pay-per-view. But I don't know. I see it on our feed all the time, whether it be on the boxing shows or the commenting on our social media stuff, that people would not pay to watch him in a main event pay-per-view. So get past this guy here. So, yeah, I'm not sure whether that happens. I hope it does, but I'm just not sure who they could probably bring out to fight Michael Zarafa. He's in a really odd sort of spot at the moment. He's ranked, I think, by the WBA and the WBO. Now, obviously, WBA is not going to happen with Lara being there. Maybe Janibek could want to fight with him, and I think I've actually said that in the past, that maybe they might bring Janibek back out to fight Michael. That could be the big pay-per-view. I don't know, but he's in a really precarious position at the moment because he's obviously not really interested in the Australian scene unless it's Tim Tszyu, and internationally he's just not a big enough name to generate a big fight, especially to come to Australia. And I know No Limit have supposedly invested in him or going to invest in him in a big fight, but I'm just not sure what he brings to the table as far as offering for a big pay-per-view fight here in Australia. I don't know, who knows, but hey, I was just, like most people, doubting that No Limit would be able to get Tim Tszyu back into the space of a world title fight, and they've done that very, very quickly. So maybe we're underestimating what they can do with Michael Zarafa. Let's hope so. I mean, the more big fights over here, the better. We're in a golden age of boxing here at the moment, so it would be great if we could get him a fight here. But yeah, I'm just almost just think he's in the middle of nowhere land at the moment, Michael Zarafa. But again, that can change really, really quick, can't it? Another couple of or bit of news featuring a couple of Aussie fighters. It was great to see Isaac, the head splitter Hardman, back. Not back as far as in the ring goes, but back on social media doing his thing. It was in response to Joel Camilleri, and apparently that fight was, according to Joel, was very, very close to being made. Joel's been very vocal on social media lately about his career and the difficulties in getting the big fights, and he wants the fights, but you know, at his age needs to take them. But he released a poster. Or was it his mum Marty had made up? Now the opposing fighter was blurred out, and he said, "Look, this is the fight I was going to announce, and for whatever reason it didn't happen. The other guy wouldn't sign it. Would have been one of the biggest fights in Australia to be made, and went on with it." And of course, Isaac Hardman, in Isaac Hardman fashion, responded in a way only he could. You've got to look at his Instagram account. It's pretty funny actually. He never holds back, but he's saying, hey, he will split the head of what's he call him, camel toe, Camilleri. He's always got a great comeback as Isaac Hardman. But I think for both of these guys, this fight really makes sense. And I don't understand. Again, I'm not, in the back offices of the No Limit sort of building there, but I don't know why they wouldn't be looking to match up this fight as far as Aussie boxing fans go. It is the perfect fight. And I don't understand why. I mean, everything costs money, I get that, but this fight could do some really big things. I reckon if they put this fight on in Melbourne, they could pack out the Melbourne Pavilion. I'm not sure how many they get in there now, but 1,500 or whatever. But I reckon the TV viewers as well would be massive for this fight. I reckon a lot of people want, talk to the typical Aussie boxing fan. They don't have to be world-ranked guys. They don't have to be superstars. They don't have to have belts. They don't have to have any of that sort of stuff. Real Aussie fight fans just want great Aussie versus Aussie fights. And I think that was proven when Michael Zarafa actually fought Isaac Hardman in Melbourne. I was actually at that fight, and the atmosphere and everything in the room was just as good as any like world title fight that I've ever been to. It was fantastic. It was just, the place was buzzing, and two Aussie fighters got it on. I know the result, or the fight only went, a round and a half, whatever it was, but I just thought the whole event was fantastic, and I think it shows what can happen when you get two Aussies with big followings together. Joel's got a big following in Melbourne, Isaac from Queensland, but also a very big online presence as well. I just think, No Limit, give them the 50 grand each, or whatever the hell it takes to get him in the ring. I'm sure they'd even do it for less than that. They'd probably do it for 25 or 30 each to get in there and fight each other. Get it on. I just reckon it would more than pay for itself. And what an event it would be for, it doesn't have to be a pay-per-view even, by the way, a No Limit on Fox event. They could do it in Melbourne, and I know the money they get from Fox will be swallowed up pretty quick by the cost of the fight. But geez, I reckon the gate would more than make up and give them a little bit of profit. But if they're serious about, putting back into Aussie boxing, this is it. And I know, well, this is the other thing. Sam LeBruna managed to put the Michael Zarafa and Isaac Hardman fight together, and managed to pay both of those guys. And I'm sure both of those guys in that fight would have been paid more than what Kamakayo and Isaac will be paid in this fight. So maybe it's not No Limit. Maybe it's Sam LeBruna who puts the fight on, and maybe goes in cahoots with No Limit so it can get on TV. I don't know, but there should be no reason why this fight couldn't be made. If they can make Zarafa Hardman, I'm sure they can make Kamakayo and Hardman, especially that considering both fighters want to fight each other. So if you're out there watching either No Limit or Sam LeBruna or whoever, let's get this fight cracking. Mick Francis, No Limit. Let's get it on a Tasman card up there. Get it on the pay-per-view up there, Jai Pataya or whoever. But I just really want to see this fight. And again, it doesn't matter that neither one of them are world ranked or right up in the scheme of things. It would be a great Aussie versus Aussie fight. You go back to the days, some of the best fights in Aussie boxing history have been nowhere near like world title fights or anything like that. Like I look back to someone like Barry Michael and Frank Ropus and Lester Alice, Dale Artengo, Graham Brook, Barry Michael. All these fights back in the day, they were made, and they were just great domestic scraps that did big numbers. I just remember, the interest in the fights back then. I just imagine how it would be these days with social media and the streaming services and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Now, one other thing I would like to probably cover before we end this episode is, it's a bit of a soapbox moment. I'm going to jump on my soapbox. I don't do it that often, or maybe I do, but there was an event on the weekend. It was from a promotional firm called Alpha Events, I think it was. It was up in, where was it? It might have been Queensland. And if you didn't hear about it, it was all the influencers and, OnlyFans and all those type of, I think they were YouTubers and all those types of guys and girls went up there, and they put a fight night on and all supposedly a little bit of fun. But I tell you what, I saw a bit of the stuff on the social media, and a lot of people sharing it, commenting on about it and everything. Well, first of all, you had fighters in there, and and obviously they're not boxers because they're just influencers and YouTubers or whatever the hell they call them themselves these days. But getting in there, and I was absolutely horrified. No dramas in getting in there and fighting, but there were ones in there that absolutely had no idea how to box. That obviously had no training at all, especially the girl that fought the car racing girls at Renee Gracie or whatever her name was, and she had zero ability in the ring. It was horrific, and I know it's supposed to be fun, but I can tell you, boxing isn't fun. You get punched in the face, and it doesn't matter whether it's a fun fight or a world title fight. You get hit in the face, and damage is going to be done. And she was hanging on to her. She was wrestling her. I think she tried to kick her at one stage. She had no idea how to defend herself. That Gracie looked like she'd done a little bit to the point where she could at least keep her hands up and throw a punch. That was about it. But there were other fights on there, and you could tell that these fighters had done zero training. And the most horrific thing, and I know a lot of people say, oh, geez, you're taking it too seriously, but they had 12 people in the ring, all with blindfolds on. And it was just a free-for-all. So they sent all 12 fighters out there with blindfolds on and just swinging for the fences. Now, I was absolutely horrified. I really was. That is just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my 40-something years involved in boxing or watching boxing, how dangerous that was. And some of them were big sort of guys. I'm not sure whether, I can't remember if they actually had women in there, but yeah, it looks like it's fun and, oh, geez, everyone's laughing and carrying on. Imagine one of those guys with those swinging those massive punches, catching someone completely unaware and not being able to protect themselves, what that could have done. Now, we're all up in arms about the coward's punch and the king hits and all this sort of stuff. Well, that's what it reminded me of. That's the effect it would have had if one of those punches had landed, because that's the sort of thing that happened. You're not expecting a punch coming at you. This is what a coward punch or a king hit is. So when you're not expecting a punch and someone belts you from behind or whatever it is, because you're not expecting it, it just does horrific things to the body. We've seen people get knocked out, people killed, and I cannot believe they allowed 12 people to get in the ring and just throw haymakers at each other with no idea what was coming their way. That's what would have happened if one of those punches had landed. It would have been someone getting knocked clean out, and who knows what could have happened. Now, I know, again, probably people saying I'm taking it too serious, but hey, look at it. It is so dangerous. And my big question of this whole thing is, where is the combat board in all this? Who sanctioned that? That cannot be, well, I'll say legal or allowed, whatever it might be. Surely the combat board would not allow 12 fighters to get in there and just throw haymakers with no idea what's coming. Not to mention the fighters that were, come here, man, the fighters that were actually just one-on-one, but I had absolutely no idea what they were doing. Surely there's got to be, like with the combat boards, isn't this their job to make sure they're capable? Surely they would have, because again, I'm assuming it was a properly sanctioned show. I mean, they had TV cameras there. I think George Rose might have even been there. So, and it's all sort of fun and games, but again, my question is, where is the combat board policing these shows? Surely they would have had to have, I'm sure they passed their medicals and everything, but wouldn't you think you would have to prove that you've done some sort of boxing, whatever? I mean, it was just horrific. And I know, again, it's all fun and games and all that sort of stuff, but I'll say it again, boxing is not fun and games. It is not something that you do for a laugh. This is some serious shit here. And I just cannot believe in this day and age of what we're looking at and the programs are running and the campaigns are running and all this sort of stuff, that they allowed something like this to happen. I was just flabbergasted to see just untrained fighters going for it, dangerously untrained fighters, by the way, and then that 12-person bloody free-for-all that was just disgraceful. So I'm sure they made some money out of it. Good on them, out of it. Come on, man, let's go. Sure they made some money, but yeah, I was just, I was horrified by the whole thing and disgusted, if I'm being honest. But anyway, that's my little soapbox moment for the day. Give me your thoughts. What do you think about it? I'm sure the average punters out there that go to the footy and all this sort of stuff loved it, but I'm just staggered that, well, one, George Rose was there to watch it and support it, and be interested to see what other sort of boxing people thought of it as well. So give me your thoughts. But after all that, I'll take a deep breath, let you get on with your day. Have a good one. We'll catch you tomorrow.